Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Thanks. I never planned to end up in a 7-Eleven off a highway in northern Arizona that night. Hell, I hadn't planned much of anything since Dad passed. The world had gone gray after his funeral 3 weeks ago, like someone dimmed the brightness on everything. I'd been driving west for 2 days, no destination in mind. The kind of drive you take when you don't want to arrive anywhere, just motion for the sake of forgetting. The rain started somewhere near Flagstaff. Heavy, angry drops that beat the windshield like fists. The wipers struggled to keep up, squealing across the glass in tired, rhythmic protest. My eyes burned from lack of sleep and my throat felt coated in dust and old grief. When that red-green 7-Eleven sign cut through the storm, I almost laughed. It looked like salvation, the only thing glowing in miles of darkness. I pulled off the road, tires hissing through puddles, the old Chevy groaning like it wanted to give up too. The lot was nearly empty except for a white van parked crooked near the dumpster, one headlight still on. I killed my engine and sat for a second, watching the rain smear the world into a blur. The radio whispered static. For a long moment, I almost didn't get out. Something about that place felt still. Too still, but I needed coffee, and maybe a reason to keep going. Inside, the air smelled of bleach and stale bread. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, cold and merciless. A middle-aged man behind the counter was stalking cigarettes, humming low, some country tune I half recognized. "Evenin', bud," he said without looking up. "Evenin'," I muttered, shaking rain from my jacket. My voice sounded hollow, like it came from someone else. I made my way to the coffee station. The pot looked half-burnt, but I didn't care. I filled a cup, added too much sugar, and took a sip. It was bitter and comforting in the same breath. That's when I heard the door chime. A tall man walked in, hoodie up, hands in pockets. He didn't grab a basket, didn't even look around. Just stood near the door, dripping rain, staring straight at me. His eyes, I swear, were too wide, pupils swallowed in black. "You shouldn't stay long," he said quietly. I froze. "What?" He took a step closer, voice low and tight. "They're coming. You need to leave." My fingers tightened around the cup. Steam curled between us. "Who's coming?" He didn't answer. Just looked over his shoulder, toward the parking lot, then back at me. His face, on pale, hollow, sickly gray under the lights, twitched like he wanted to say more but couldn't. Before I could speak again, he turned and walked out into the rain. The clerk called after him. "Hey, you gonna pay for—" He stopped mid-sentence, staring at the empty doorway. "What the hell?" "Guy just walked out," I said. "What guy?" The clerk asked. "The dude in the hoodie," I said. "You didn't see him?" The man frowned, leaning over the counter. "Buddy, nobody's come in here for the past 10 minutes but you." The words hit weird, like a punch that lands a second too late. I looked at the door. The rain still came down hard, but there were no wet footprints, no sign of movement. The glass didn't even show condensation from where he'd been standing. I shook it off. I was exhausted, running on fumes and grief. Probably just my brain short-circuiting. "Rough night, huh?" The clerk said, trying to lighten the air. "You look like you've been driving a while." "Yeah," I said. "Too long." He nodded, sympathetic. "Rain'll mess with your head. Makes the world feel off." Before I could reply, the door chimed again. 2 men entered. The first was built like a refrigerator. Shaved head, denim jacket stretched tight across his shoulders. The second was tall, twitchy, with a tattoo snaking up his neck. Both looked soaked and pissed. They didn't browse. Didn't grab snacks or coffee. Just marched straight to the counter. "Register," the big one said. His voice was deep, rough, unshakable. The clerk froze. "Excuse me?" "Don't play dumb," the tattooed one snapped. "Open the damn till." I stood there, halfway down the candy aisle, gripping my cup so hard it bent in my hand. My pulse pounded in my ears. The clerk stammered, "Look, man, The big one slammed his fist on the counter. "Now!" The register beeped. Coins jingled. The small human sound suddenly felt enormous. I crouched behind the rack of chips, praying they wouldn't see me. My breath came too fast. I could hear the paper crinkling beneath my boots. The tattooed man, the one with the snake ink, turned his head slightly. His voice dropped. "Yo, you hear that?" My heart stopped. The clerk tried to cover for me. It's just the fridge humming. Happens all the time." The snake guy wasn't convinced. He started walking my way, gun now visible. Small black pistol steady in his grip. I could feel my pulse in my neck. The air felt thick. I needed to move, but every step would make noise. Then it happened. A bag of chips slid off the shelf beside me. Maybe the AC vent, maybe my elbow, I don't know. But the sound it made was sharp, final. "There!" the man shouted. I ran. The first shot blew out the front glass. The second tore through a shelf, sending candy bars raining to the floor. I ducked, sprinting toward the door, legs burning, mind blank. Something hot ripped across my shoulder. Pain like fire bursting through skin. I stumbled, crashed into the door, and fell into the parking lot. Rain mixed with blood. The world spun. Behind me, a voice yelled, "Get him!" Headlights flared from the white van by the dumpster. The engine roared to life. I crawled toward my truck, hands slipping on wet asphalt. My keys were in my pocket, somewhere deep, tangled in fabric. I could hear footsteps slapping behind me, fast. "Hey!" someone barked. The gunshot that followed cracked the air like thunder. I jammed the key into the ignition, heart hammering so loud I couldn't hear anything else. The truck coughed, sputtered, then caught. I floored it. Tires screamed against the wet pavement, another shot. The back window exploded, glass spraying like ice. Through the rearview mirror, I saw them. The two men standing under the flickering 7-Eleven sign. One still holding the gun, both staring at me as I vanished into the night. I drove for hours before I realized I didn't know where I was going. The rain followed, relentless. I finally pulled off near an abandoned rest stop and collapsed over the steering wheel, shaking, bleeding, sobbing like a kid. When I woke, it was daylight. My shoulder throbbed, crusted with dried blood. Somehow I made it to the nearest hospital. The nurse said I'd lost a lot of it but would live. The cops came later that evening. A tall woman named Officer Ramirez did most of the talking. Her tone was calm but skeptical, the kind reserved for drunks and trauma cases. "Start from the beginning," she said. I told her everything. The two men, the robbery, the shots, the man in the hoodie who warned me. When I mentioned him, she looked up. "What man?" "The guy who told me to leave," I said. "He was inside before it happened." She exchanged a glance with her partner.
"Sir, there's no record of anyone else in that store."
"We checked the cameras." "That's impossible," I said. "Check again." She did. The next morning, she came back with a tablet. Showed me the footage frame by frame. There I was, in wet jacket, coffee cup in hand, turning, speaking, staring into empty space. Talking to no one, my stomach dropped. "That's not right." "He was right there," Ramirez sighed. "You'd been driving for what, 2 days straight?" "Grief, fatigue. They can do strange things to the brain," I wanted to argue, but I saw something in her eyes. Pity, like she'd seen too many people broken by ghosts of their own making. Weeks passed. My shoulder healed mostly. I stayed in a cheap motel outside Winslow, trying to figure out what to do next. The nights were the worst. When the rain hit the roof just like that night, and every flickering light reminded me of that store. Then one evening, I stopped at another gas station, not a 7-Eleven, just a local joint with peeling paint and a dead soda machine. The cashier looked bored out of her mind. I grabbed a coffee, trying not to think about it. But as I turned toward the counter, I caught sight of someone standing by the window, black hoodie, head bowed, face hidden in shadow. My heart stopped. He didn't move, didn't look at me, just stood there, watching. I blinked, and he was gone. I paid, left without a word, and sat in my truck for 10 minutes, staring at the window, trying to breathe. There were no footprints this time either. I told myself it was exhaustion again, or trauma. That's what people say when reality doesn't make sense. It's trauma. But deep down, I know what I saw. Sometimes when I drive past lonely highways late at night, I catch a glimpse of him again in the rearview mirror. That same pale face, those two wide eyes, waiting at the edge of the light. And every time I smell burnt coffee and bleach, I hear his whisper again, soft as the rain. I've spent most of my life working quiet jobs, the kind that don't make headlines or get you recognition. Just simple work that keeps your hands busy and your mind quiet. For the past 8 years, that's been the 7-Eleven on Highway 22, just outside a small Oregon town called Milton Creek. I'm Rick Lawson, store manager and franchise owner, 53 years old, divorced, and too tired to start over. I bought the store after leaving my job as a truck driver. Too many years on the road, too many sleepless nights, too many faces I'd rather forget. The 7-Eleven was supposed to be my peace. It gave me a purpose: stock shelves, count inventory, small talk with locals. Easy, predictable. My two employees, Jess and Tyler, were the kind of kids you grow fond of without realizing it. Jess was 21, quick with sarcasm, but good at heart. Tyler was 19, always joking, always late. I used to scold him, but he reminded me of myself at that age. Lost, restless, chasing distractions. We were a little family. Dysfunctional maybe, but still a family. Until that morning in June, the day started normal enough. The morning sun had that gold hue that makes everything look cleaner than it really is. The air smelled of coffee and gasoline. Jess was at the register, humming along to the radio, while Tyler was stacking soda bottles in the cooler. I was in the back, updating the weekly report when the bell above the door chimed. Jess greeted the customer. "Morning, sir. Coffee's fresh if you want some." No reply. I peeked through the little window in the storage room door and saw him. A man in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. Balding, heavy coat despite the summer heat, pale as paper. He didn't look like a local. Most people in Milton Creek know each other, but I'd never seen him before. He walked slowly through the aisles, touching things he didn't buy. Cereal boxes, candy bars, a lighter, a magazine. Not grabbing, just feeling. Jess looked uneasy. Tyler muttered, "Guy's weird, huh?" I told him to mind his work. But something about the man felt wrong. He came up to the counter finally with just a single item, a small disposable camera. The kind tourists still sometimes buy. Jess rang him up. "That'll be $8.99, sir." The man didn't answer. He just stared at her, then at me through the window. His voice was soft, raspy, almost curious. "Do you still keep the photos?" Jess frowned. Sorry?" He repeated it. "The photos. You keep them here?" I stepped out from the back. "We don't do photo processing anymore, sir. That ended years ago." He smiled faintly. "That's a shame. Used to be. You could see everything that happened in a town by what got left on film." Jess forced a nervous laugh. "Guess phones made that easier." The man turned to me again. His eyes lingered too long. Maybe some things shouldn't be on phones. Then he paid in cash and left. I watched him through the window as he got into a rusted green pickup and drove off. His plates were covered in mud. For the rest of the morning, the air in the store felt heavier. Jess joked that maybe he was just lonely. Tyler said he gave off serial killer vibes. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. That night, around 11:45 p.m., I was closing up alone. Jess had the morning shift the next day, and Tyler had left an hour earlier. I was counting the till when I noticed something strange on the monitor. One of the security cameras, Cam 3, the one outside facing the gas pumps, was showing static. I tapped the screen. Nothing. Just gray noise. Then, through the static, a faint shape appeared. Someone standing near the pumps. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but then I saw it clearly. Someone holding a camera, taking photos of the store. My blood ran cold. I stepped outside, calling out, "Hey!" "We're closed," no answer. Just the faint click of a shutter. I walked closer. The man turned, his pale face lit by the orange glow of the streetlight. The same one from the morning. He smiled again, then got into his truck and drove off. I stood there a long time before locking up. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Jess looked worried when she came in. "Rick, something weird happened." There were photos in the mailbox. Old school film photos. No return address, I frowned. "Photos of what?" She handed me the envelope. Inside were maybe 20 pictures. All black and white. Grainy, but unmistakable. Every photo was of the 7-Eleven. The parking lot, the aisles, the counter. And in each one, the timestamp in the corner read June 14th, 1999. That was 24 years ago. I flipped through them, my hands trembling. One photo showed the same store layout, but older. The old soda machine, the old countertop. And behind the counter stood a man I recognized instantly. Me, younger, yes, but definitely me. My throat tightened. I hadn't even lived in Oregon back then. Jess looked at me. "Rick, are you okay?" "You're white as a sheet," I forced a laugh. Probably someone messing around. Maybe an edit, but I didn't believe it myself. That night I stayed late again. I told the kids to go home early. Around midnight, I sat in the back office reviewing the old footage. At 12:07 a.m., the motion sensor by the back door triggered. I switched to that camera. Someone was inside the store. The man in the coat, he wasn't stealing. He wasn't doing anything. Just walking down the aisles, same slow pace, same eerie calm. I grabbed the bat I kept by the counter and rushed out, but the store was empty. I checked every corner, every aisle, even the restroom. Nothing. When I looked at the monitor again, the man was gone from the footage too, like he'd never been there. That's when I saw the Polaroid on the counter, fresh photo, still warm. It was me, standing exactly where I was right then, bat in hand, eyes wide. By morning, I'd convinced myself it had to be a prank. Maybe Tyler was behind it. Maybe Jess. Kids these days love that kind of crap for social media. But when Tyler showed up, he looked shaken. "Dude, did you see the dumpster?" We went outside. The smell hit first, and sweet rot mixed with gasoline. Behind the dumpster was something wrapped in tarp and duct tape. We called the sheriff. When they opened it, I thought my stomach would give out. Inside was the man's coat. And bones. Human bones. The sheriff said they'd been there a long time. Decades at least. They took statements, ran checks. But there was no missing person report that matched. They ruled it undetermined origin. That night I couldn't go home. I sat in the store, the hum of the refrigerator my only company. Around 3 a.m. I saw movement on the screen again. The man was standing outside, staring through the glass. I grabbed the phone, called the sheriff. But before they picked up, static, then all the lights went out. Only the faint red glow of the open 24 hours sign remained. He stepped inside. The door hadn't even opened, but he was there. I could smell the rot on him like wet earth and chemicals. "You kept them," he whispered. I stumbled back.
Kept who?
He pointed toward the storage room. The ones who screamed. The ones who didn't leave. My knees nearly gave out. I hadn't told anyone. Not since I moved here. Not since I'd buried what I did on the road all those years ago. The hitchhikers. The ones who trusted me. The ones I left where no one would find them. The man smiled. "You thought changing jobs would change you." He reached out a pale hand and pressed something into my palm. A small, blood-stained film canister. When I looked up, he was gone. I spent the next day cleaning, scrubbing shelves, repainting the back wall, anything to distract myself. Jess came in around noon and said I looked awful. I told her I was just tired. When I went to throw away the mop water, I noticed something near the back door. Footprints in the dust. Bare footprints, small, like a child's. They led to the utility room, and there, in the corner where the wall met the floor, was a new Polaroid. It showed the three of us, me, Jess, and Tyler, smiling behind the counter. The timestamp read tomorrow, 42 a.m. The next day came. I almost didn't open the store, but I couldn't afford to shut down. At exactly 9:42, the doorbell chimed. Jess laughed about something Tyler said. For a brief second, I forgot the fear. Then I heard the shutter click. The man was back. He lifted the camera, took one last picture, and said, "Now you'll remember too." The lights flickered, and before I could move, everything went black. When I woke, the store was quiet. Too quiet. Jess and Tyler were gone. I searched everywhere. Parking lot, restroom, storage room. Nothing. Just their name tags on the counter. The cameras showed nothing, except one thing. On cam 3, outside by the pumps, the image was frozen, but not empty. 3 figures stood there, one older man, 2 young clerks, all staring back at the lens. I watched that frozen image for hours, hoping it would change. It never did. It's been 6 weeks now. The store runs itself somehow. Every morning the doors unlock. The lights flick on. Coffee brews fresh, though I don't remember setting the timer. And every night at 3 a.m., the man in the coat stands by the window with his camera. Sometimes, I swear I hear the shudder. Maybe this is what I deserve. Maybe the dead never stay buried when they're buried in guilt. All I know is the photos keep coming. Each one a little closer. Each one a little clearer. And in every new photo, I'm fading just a bit more. I never planned to end up working nights at a 7-Eleven. But life doesn't really care about your plans, does it? After the divorce, I lost the apartment, my savings, and most of my will to care about what came next. I just needed a job that didn't involve too many people asking questions. So when the manager of a small 7-Eleven off Highway 281 said, "You okay with nights?" I nodded before he finished the sentence. That's how I became the guy behind the counter from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. The store sat right at the edge of town, too far for foot traffic, too close to the woods for comfort. It was quiet, except when the trucks rolled in or the storm winds howled through the parking lot. My coworker, Ronnie, usually handled the early shift, but 2 weeks ago he slipped on a wet floor and broke his ankle. The boss, Gus, told me I'd have to cover solo for a while. Ain't hard, he said. You just keep coffee hot and don't let no tweakers hang around. Right. Easy. The first few nights were uneventful. A couple of truckers, a drunk kid or two, the usual hum of the Slurpee machine and the buzz of the flickering sign outside. But Thursday night, and that one changed everything. 10:41 p.m. The air outside was freezing, sharp enough to bite. I was restocking cigarettes behind the counter when the doorbell jingled. A man stepped in, tall, soaking wet from the rain, wearing a flannel jacket that looked 2 sizes too big. He didn't say a word, just shuffled over to the coffee machine, filled a cup, and stood there stirring it without taking a sip. I tried to sound casual. Hell of a storm out there, huh? He didn't answer. His reflection in the freezer glass looked pale, almost gray. After a long moment, he walked up to the counter and placed a crumpled $5 bill down. His hand was trembling. I rang him up, gave him change, and that's when I noticed his fingertips looked raw, skin peeling like he'd been digging into something rough for hours. You all right, man? I asked. He glanced at me, eyes bloodshot, unfocused. Then he whispered, You shouldn't keep those lights on after midnight. Before I could respond, he turned and walked straight out into the rain, leaving his coffee behind. I watched through the window as he crossed the parking lot and disappeared toward the tree line behind the store. 11:30 p.m. The rain had picked up, slamming against the glass. I tried calling Gus to tell him about the weird customer, but the phone just kept beeping and no signal. When I stepped outside to check the power lines, I saw something strange near the dumpsters. A puddle, darker than the rest, rippling though there was no wind. The automatic lights above it flickered, and for a split second I swear I saw movement, like a hand surfacing then slipping back under. I shook it off. Probably water dripping from the awning. Still, I locked the back door. 12:03 a.m., a truck pulled up. Old Ford, loud muffler. The driver was a regular, Daryl, who delivered milk and bread for the local suppliers. I felt relieved to see someone familiar. Man, you look like hell, he said, walking in with his hood dripping. That storm's nuts. Tell me about it. Power's flickering every few minutes. He leaned on the counter. Hey, that back road's still closed? Which one? The one behind the store. Sheriff said something about a sinkhole last week. I frowned. Didn't hear about that, Daryl chuckled. Of course you didn't, Gus probably forgot to mention. Whole damn patch of ground just caved in. Some folks said they found... He paused, looking at the floor. Never mind. Just stay inside, all right? He grabbed a pack of jerky, paid, and left. When his truck's taillights vanished down the highway, the silence hit me harder than before. 12:42 a.m. The lights flickered again. I was in the aisle by the coolers when I heard a wet, dragging sound from somewhere near the storage room. It wasn't the mop. I hadn't used it yet. It was heavier, slow, like something being pulled across the tiles. Ronnie, I said out of reflex, then remembered I was alone. The sound stopped. I stood there for a full minute, heart hammering. Then I grabbed the flashlight from under the counter and pushed open the storage room door. Nothing. Just stacks of soda boxes, paper towels, and a puddle near the drain. Except it wasn't water. The liquid was dark, sticky, smelling faintly like rust and earth. The drain cover rattled. I backed out and shut the door. 1:15 a.m., rain still pounded outside. I decided to distract myself by refilling the hot dog roller. As I reached for a bun, the doorbell jingled again. A girl stood there, maybe 20, soaked to the bone, mascara running. She looked terrified. Please, she said, voice cracking. Can I use your phone? My car broke down. Sure, I said, unlocking the counterphone. Storm's killing the signal, but you can try. She dialed, waited. Nothing but static. Tears welled up in her eyes. You live around here? I asked. She shook her head. Heading to Tulsa, took a wrong turn, ended up somewhere back there. She pointed toward the woods. There was a road sign that said Old County Lane, but it just stopped. I swear I saw a house, but she stopped, biting her lip. Something was moving in the yard. Her voice trembled. It looked like people, but they were crawling. My skin went cold. You stay here, I said. There's a coffee machine. I'll check the back door. When I stepped outside the stockroom again, the girl was gone. The door hadn't opened. No footprints. Just her half-empty cup of coffee on the counter. Steam still rising. 2:06 a.m. I kept hearing faint knocks from the walls, like someone tapping from behind the coolers. At first it came from the left, then the right. Moving slowly toward the front of the store, I muttered, "If this is some prank, I swear." Then the intercom crackled, and the one connected to the storage camera feed, a whisper slid through. "Don't turn off the lights." I yanked the plug from the wall. The sound didn't stop. 2:30 a.m. I checked the security monitors. The outdoor cameras showed nothing but rain and static. But in the corner of one frame, not the alley behind the dumpsters, I saw movement. A figure crawling out from the drain grate. Its limbs were too long, knees bending the wrong way. It dragged itself halfway across the pavement before freezing, like it knew I was watching. Then it lifted its head. Its mouth stretched impossibly wide, and it smiled straight at the camera. The feed went black. 3 a.m., the power cut out completely. Emergency lights flickered dim red over the aisles. I grabbed my phone, dead. Not low battery, not restarting, I just dead. I heard it again. I heard that dragging sound. But this time it was closer, coming from the front door. The bell jingled soft, though the door hadn't opened. Then the sound moved toward the counter. I crouched behind the register, holding the flashlight tight. The beam trembled as I aimed it toward the aisle. Something slid into view. A hand, bloated, gray, nails cracked. It gripped the bottom shelf and pulled. Then another. Then a face rose slowly into the light, slick with rain and filth. It was the man from earlier. The one who'd warned me about the lights. Only now, half his jaw hung loose, skin sloughing off like paper. His voice came out wet and broken. "You kept them on." I stumbled backward, knocking over a rack of chips. When I looked up again, he was gone. Just a dark trail across the tiles leading toward the cooler. 3:30 a.m. I don't know what made me open the back door, curiosity or madness, but I had to see. The air outside was thick, humid despite the rain. The puddle by the dumpsters was still rippling. Then I noticed the drain cover was missing. Something inside the opening shifted like something breathing under the concrete. I heard whispers, faint, overlapping voices. "Join us. Stay. It's warm here." Then a hand shot out, grabbing my ankle. I kicked free, slammed the door shut, and jammed a broom handle through the latch. My chest hurt from running back to the front. The lights flickered once more, then went completely out. 4:02 a.m. I sat behind the counter in the dark, holding my flashlight, waiting for dawn. I could hear the dragging again, not outside, not behind, but above. Something was crawling along the ceiling tiles, nails scraping metal. Dust rained down. Then a tile near the coffee machine dipped inward, bulging like something was pressing against it from above. A face pushed through, eyes clouded white, mouth opening wider than it should. Whispered words slid out, layered like an echo. They don't like to be forgotten. I ran. I didn't stop until I hit the highway, rain slicing across my face. A truck honked, swerving past me. I flagged it down, breath ragged, hands shaking. The driver rolled down his window. "Jesus, buddy, you okay?" 7-Eleven, I gasped. "Something's wrong there." He frowned. "There ain't been a 7-Eleven on that road for years. It burned down back in 2017. My blood froze. I turned around, where the store should have been, just a blackened lot and a rusted sign half buried in weeds. No lights, no cars, but the faint red glow of the open sign still flickered in the puddle's reflection. Epilogue, that was 3 months ago. I quit driving routes, moved 3 states away. But last night, while unpacking, I found something in my jacket pocket. A receipt from that 7-Eleven. Time-stamped 4:03 a.m., total 000. The signature line read, "See you soon." And sometimes, when the house gets quiet, I hear it again, faint, dragging across the floorboards beneath me. I never used to believe in strange places. Not really. I figured every weird story about ghost towns, phantom highways, or haunted diners came from truckers too tired to tell what's real anymore. But that was before I took the night shift at the 7-Eleven off exit 42. It was supposed to be a simple gig, minimum wage, graveyard hours, free coffee. I'd been laid off from a delivery job and needed something steady while I looked for real work. The store sat on the edge of a dying town in Arizona called Dry Creek. Just a handful of motels, a bar, and this 7-Eleven clinging to the highway like a lonely outpost. The manager, a woman named Debbie, hired me on the spot. "You don't mind the nights, do you?" she asked. "Nah," I told her. "I've done worse." She gave this nervous half laugh. "Good. Most folks don't last long. Gets quiet out here. Too quiet sometimes." That should have been my first red flag. The first couple of weeks were uneventful. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The routine was simple: stock the shelves, mop the floor, ring up the occasional trucker or drunk straggler. Most nights I saw maybe 5 customers total. The hum of the refrigerators and the buzz of fluorescent lights became the soundtrack of my life. My only coworker was Hank, an old guy who worked the same shift twice a week. He was one of those desert lifers, leathery skin, silver beard, always chewing sunflower seeds. "Listen, kid," he said my first night. "You hear anything weird after midnight, just ignore it. Don't go poking around. Weird like what?" He gave me a slow smile. "You'll know if you hear it." I laughed it off, but I didn't forget it. The first strange thing happened about a month in. It was 2:13 a.m., dead quiet except for the hum of the ice machine outside. I was restocking coffee filters when I heard a ding from the door sensor, the one that chimes when someone comes in. I looked up. No one was there. The doors were closed. The lot outside was empty. Not a soul, not even a car. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe the sensor was glitchy. But then it happened again. Ding. Pause. Ding. I stepped around the counter and peered through the glass. The parking lot shimmered under the fluorescent lights, empty as ever. The desert wind kicked up a swirl of dust. Then faintly I saw footprints in the dust near pump number 3, fresh ones leading toward the door. And then they stopped. No turnaround prints, no continuation. Just ended like whoever made them vanished mid-step. I went back inside, locked the doors, and turned up the radio. The next night, Hank noticed I was jumpy. "You see something?" he asked while counting the cigarettes behind the counter. "Just weird stuff with the door," I said. "Like someone's there but isn't," he grunted. "Yeah, they like to test you first." "Who?" "The ones out past the fence." He said it so casually that I didn't know whether to laugh or be scared. "What fence?" I asked. "The chain link one behind the dumpsters. You stay past 2 o'clock, you'll hear 'em whispering. Don't go looking. That's how they get you." I waited for him to grin, to admit it was a joke. But he didn't. He just went back to his inventory like we'd been talking about weather. A few nights later, I had the store all to myself again. A thunderstorm had rolled through earlier, the kind that turns desert air into static. The roads were slick, and lightning flashed every few minutes, lighting up the empty pumps. It was 1:47 a.m. when the power flickered. The lights dimmed, the refrigerators clicked off, and the radio fell silent. For a few seconds, the world was pitch dark, until the backup generator kicked in. That's when I heard it. A soft voice, somewhere near the coffee station, just one word, stretched out like a sigh. "Hey." I froze. "Hello?" No answer. I took my flashlight and shone it toward the sound. The aisles were empty, shadows stretching long across the floor. I checked behind the counter, the restrooms, even the stockroom, nothing. When I came back out, there was a cup of coffee sitting on the counter, full, steam rising. I hadn't poured it. I stared at it, heart hammering. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement by the window. A figure standing just beyond the glass. Watching me, I whipped my light toward it. Nobody there, only the reflection of the flickering sign. 7-Eleven, open all night. The next morning, I told Debbie. She gave me that tired manager look, like I'd just told her the slushy machine broke again. "Probably just your imagination," she said. "Night shifts mess with people." "You want day hours? I can try to swap." "No," I said quickly. "I'm fine," but I wasn't fine. I started dreading the nights. Every creak, every flicker of light felt like a warning. Then, one Friday, things escalated. It started normal enough. I was halfway through my shift when a man came in. Tall, heavy coat despite the heat, face mostly hidden under a hood. He didn't speak at first, just walked the aisle slow, like he was looking for something specific. "Need help finding something?" I asked. He turned his head slightly. His skin looked pale, not sick pale, but wrong, like old wax. His eyes were dark and wet, reflecting light like oil. "Gas," he said finally, voice low and slow. "Pump 3. I glanced at the monitor. Pump 3's hose was swinging, but no car was there. There's no vehicle outside," I said. He didn't respond, just stared at me around long enough that my stomach knotted. Then he turned and walked out. I followed to the door, but when I looked outside, he was gone. Vanished into thin air, and there by Pump 3 were wet footprints leading toward the desert behind the store. I called Hank the next day. "Yeah," he said after I told him everything. "You saw one." "One what?" "They ain't ghosts, not exactly. This place was built on old ground. Used to be a miners' camp back in the 40s. Whole town buried after the flood. They don't rest easy." I didn't know what to say. He continued. "You ever check that Polaroid board in the break room?" "What board?" "Behind the soda fridge. You'll see." That night, curiosity got the better of me. I pulled the fridge out a few inches, and sure enough, there was a corkboard mounted behind it, covered in dusty Polaroids. Each photo showed someone standing in front of this same 7-Eleven. Most looked like employees, uniforms, name tags, smiles, but the dates written on them were off 2029, 2037, 2051, future years. The last one showed a blurry image of a man in a hoodie at pump number 3. Someone had scribbled underneath in marker, "Don't answer when he calls." After that, the nights became unbearable. The lights would flicker every time the clock hit 1:59. The door sensor would chime even when it was locked. Sometimes I'd find things moved. A candy bar facing backward, a newspaper from the wrong date, a receipt printed with nonsense symbols. But the worst came 2 weeks later. A sandstorm had rolled in again, fierce enough that the wind howled like voices. Around 2:05 a.m., the power cut out completely. No backup this time. Just darkness and the roar of sand against glass. Then, knock, knock, knock. I froze behind the counter. The door was shaking, rattling in its frame. A voice followed, muffled but clear. "Hey, you forgot my change." It was the man from Pump No. 3. I didn't move. I didn't speak. The knocking stopped. For a few seconds, only the storm. Then a whisper right beside my ear, "Inside the store, open up." I turned slowly. Nothing there. Just empty aisles, flickering emergency light. Then all the fridges started humming at once, louder and louder until the sound became a shriek. The windows bowed inward, glass spiderwebbing. I ducked behind the counter, covering my head. When it finally stopped, I crawled out. The power returned, the hum faded, and everything looked normal again. Except for one thing. On the counter was a receipt, printed neatly. It read, "Pump number 3, 6666 cashier. You." I quit the next morning. Packed my things, told Debbie I was done. She didn't argue, just nodded like she already knew why. But even after I left Dry Creek, something kept bothering me, a nagging thought I couldn't shake. So a few weeks later, I drove back just to see. The 7-Eleven was gone, not closed, gone. The lot was empty, only a patch of cracked concrete where the store had been. The highway sign was missing too, the one that said Exit 42, gas and food. I sat there for a long time, engine idling, heart thudding. Then in the rearview mirror I saw it, faint but real. The glow of fluorescent lights behind me, and the shape of a man in a hood standing beside an invisible pump. He lifted his hand slowly and waved. I don't drive that route anymore, but sometimes, late at night when the road stretches long and the radio cuts to static, I swear I see a flicker of red and green neon in the distance, just for a second. And I hear that familiar ding, the sound of a door opening somewhere it shouldn't. I've been driving trucks for almost 18 years now. You learn to live inside your own head out on the road. Hours of nothing but asphalt, white lines, and the low hum of the engine. It's a lonely kind of peace. I haul freight mostly between Nevada and Arizona. Desert routes that feel like another planet after midnight. That night started like any other. My dispatcher had called last minute, said a shipment needed to reach Kingman before sunrise. I'd just gotten home, but the overtime pay was too good to pass up. I kissed my wife goodnight, promised I'd be back by morning, and hit the highway. By 2:30 a.m., I was running on fumes, both in my tank and in my body. The caffeine pills had stopped working hours ago. My eyes burned from staring at the road. The desert around me looked endless, just dirt, broken fences, and the occasional roadkill glinting in the headlights. Then I saw it. A flickering neon sign glowing red and green against the dark. 11. I almost laughed. A tiny oasis of bad coffee and overpriced snacks in the middle of nowhere. I pulled in, gravel crunching under my tires. The parking lot was empty except for an old pickup covered in dust and a single dim streetlight that buzzed like a dying fly. The sign above the door kept blinking. Open 24 hours, though half the letters were burnt out. I grabbed my wallet, stepped out into the cool desert air and stretched. The silence was thick. Even the crickets were quiet. The bell above the door gave a half-hearted ding when I walked in. The place was dead quiet. Aisles half empty, a faint smell of burnt coffee and disinfectant. Behind the counter stood a guy I'd never seen before. Maybe mid-20s, pale skin, dark circles under his eyes. His name tag said Rick. He didn't say hi or even look up when I entered. Just scrolled on his phone, smirking at whatever he was watching. "Evenin'," I said, heading toward the back. "Bathroom still open?" He nodded without looking up. "Yeah, just back past the energy drinks. Door on the left." His voice was low and scratchy like he hadn't spoken in days. As I walked, I noticed the floor, sticky in spots like spilled soda that never got cleaned. The hum of the refrigerators filled the silence, a constant droning sound that somehow made the place feel emptier. The bathroom door was filthy, handprints smeared across it, the metal lock hanging loose. I hesitated a second, then pushed it open. The smell hit me first. A mix of bleach, mold, and something rotten. The flickering fluorescent light made everything look sickly yellow. 2 stalls, 1 urinal sink cracked down the middle. I picked the cleaner-looking stall and shut the door. Halfway through doing my business, I heard it breathing, slow, heavy, almost wet. It came from the next stall. At first, I figured someone else had walked in, but I hadn't heard the door open. I listened. Still that slow, uneven inhale and exhale like someone struggling to breathe through water. "Hey, you good, man?" I called out. Silence. Then, a faint scratching sound against the metal partition like fingernails dragging down it. That made me freeze. The breathing stopped. My heart started pounding. I told myself it was just nerves, just exhaustion. I zipped up, unlocked the door, and stepped out. The other stall door was closed. No feet visible underneath. I moved to the sink. The faucet dripped, each drop echoing too loud in the tiny room. I twisted the knob. The water sputtered brown before clearing up. As I washed my hands, I glanced up at the mirror, and that's when I saw it. The stall behind me, the closed one, was open just a crack now, and through the gap, I could see fingers. Long, grayish, too many of them, gripping the edge of the door. I spun around. The stall door was wide open, empty. The light flickered again, buzzing like angry insects. I felt every hair on my arms. Something about that silence and that wrongness made me step backward until my heel hit the wall. Then the motion. Sensor air freshener on the wall went off with a peast. I damn near jumped out of my skin. I forced a laugh. Told myself I was losing it. I grabbed a paper towel, dried my hands, and pushed out of the bathroom. Rick was still behind the counter. Same position, still scrolling on his phone. "You guys got someone else here tonight?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He looked up then, slow, like it took effort. "No, just me. Why?" "Thought I heard somebody in the bathroom." He smiled. Not a friendly smile, more like a twitch, a stretch of lips that didn't reach his eyes. "Probably the pipes," he said. "Old building. Makes all kinds of noises." "Yeah, sure." I grabbed a coffee, paid, and he slid the receipt across the counter with those long fingers. Too long for his hands. "You truckers come through a lot?" I asked, just to fill the silence. "Not much anymore," he said softly. "Not since the incident." "What incident?" He tilted his head. "You didn't hear?" "Guess not." He leaned in a little, whispering like it was a secret. "Couple years back, one of our clerks went missing. People said he lost his mind. Started keeping pets. Rick grinned, teeth slightly crooked. "Yeah, except they weren't alive." I laughed nervously. "You messing with me?" He just stared, dead serious, eyes wide and unblinking. He said they talked to him through the vents. Said they kept him company when no one else did. I didn't know what to say to that. Then his expression changed. Smile gone, voice barely above a whisper. Some nights you can still hear them. I didn't stick around to find out what that meant. I muttered something about needing to get back on the road and hurried out. The bell over the door chimed weakly as I stepped into the parking lot. The desert air felt too still, too heavy. I unlocked my rig and climbed in, trying to shake off the weirdness. I took one sip of the coffee. It tasted burnt and bitter. As I started the engine, I glanced back at the store. Through the glass door, Rick was still there, staring straight at me now. Not smiling, not moving, just watching. The flickering light above him made his face flash in and out of shadow. Then the light went out completely. I didn't wait. I hit the gas and pulled onto the highway, my headlights cutting through the darkness. For a while, I tried to laugh it off. Told myself it was just a creepy night clerk and my imagination running wild. But the farther I drove, the worse I felt. Something about the way he'd said that last line, "You can still hear him," kept echoing in my head. A few miles down, my phone buzzed. No service, but somehow there was a new notification. A message with no sender. Just a text that read, "Don't leave me here." I slammed on the brakes. My heart nearly stopped. I checked the phone again. The message was gone. Just a blank screen. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat and pressed harder on the gas. By dawn, I reached Kingman, dropped off the load, and tried to forget the whole thing. But I couldn't. That night, I stopped at a diner outside Flagstaff. The TV over the counter was playing the local news. I wasn't paying attention until the words 7-Eleven employee found dead caught my ear. The anchor said the store had been closed for investigation after a foul odor and suspicious activity. They'd found remains, not human, but animal-like, stuffed in the walls and vents. Dogs, cats, raccoons. The report said the current employee had been missing for 3 days. They showed his photo. It was Rick. Same pale skin. Same tired eyes. The waitress must have seen my face go white because she asked if I was okay. Yeah, I lied. Just thought I recognized him. That night, parked in my rig outside the diner, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that message. About the breathing in the stall. Around 3 a.m., I finally drifted off, only to wake to a noise from the sleeper cab behind me. A wet, rasping breath. "Don't leave me here," a voice whispered. When I turned around, my phone screen lit up by itself. On it, a new message appeared. Same words, same timestamp. "Don't leave me here." And from somewhere in the dark corner of the cab came the faintest sound of dripping water. Plink. I never planned on working the graveyard shift at a 7-Eleven in the middle of nowhere. But bills don't care about pride. After my old job at the mechanics shop went under, I took whatever paid steady. Nights were quiet, easy money, and I figured, how bad could it be selling coffee and chips to truckers? The store sat off Highway 22, just outside a dying Oregon town called Ridgeway. One flickering streetlight in the parking lot, a broken ice machine humming beside the door, and the same 2 vending machines that had been there since the 90s. The kind of place you only stopped at because everything else was closed. My name's Logan Price. 31, divorced, trying to crawl out from under debt. I'd been at the 7-Eleven maybe 3 months when it happened. The night started normal. It was late October, wind sharp enough to sting your face. I'd just finished mopping near the coffee bar when Tina, my coworker, waved her keys at me. "All right, I'm out. You sure you'll be good alone till 4? "Yeah," I said. "Go home before your husband starts texting me again asking where you are." She rolled her eyes, smirking. "Don't jinx it." When her taillights disappeared, it was just me, the hum of the refrigerators and the smell of burnt coffee grounds. I didn't mind it. Quiet nights gave me time to think. Sometimes too much time. Around midnight, a couple of drunk college kids came in laughing way too loud, trying to buy beer until I reminded them it was past legal hours. They bought energy drinks instead and stumbled out, leaving muddy footprints on the tile. Then things went still. 37 a.m. The cameras clicked as they rotated. That mechanical whir that becomes part of your breathing after enough shifts. I leaned on the counter, scrolling through my phone, half watching the security monitors. A light rain started outside, tapping soft against the glass. That's when the door chime rang. I looked up, expecting another group of kids or maybe a trucker, but instead, there was just one man. He stood in the doorway like he wasn't sure if he was allowed in. Mid-40s maybe, Stringy hair plastered from the rain, eyes too wide. He wore a faded army jacket and old jeans soaked at the cuffs. The guy looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Evening," I called out. He didn't answer, just stared. Then slowly stepped inside. The automatic door shut behind him with that thunk that made the store suddenly feel a lot smaller. I tried again, forcing a smile. "Coffee's fresh if you want some." Cold night, his voice came low, gravelly. "You keep it cold in here on purpose?" "What?" He blinked a few times, glancing toward the back coolers. "Feels like a morgue." I laughed awkwardly. "Well, yeah, gotta keep the milk cold." No reaction. Just that blank stare. He moved down aisle 3, dragging his boots slightly, leaving faint wet prints. And right then the smell hit me, faint at first. Like wet rust, then stronger, metallic. Rotting meat kind of smell. I thought maybe he'd spilled something on himself. Or worse, maybe he was homeless and something had died in his pack. He carried this huge black duffel bag that looked heavy enough to hold bricks. My gut said, watch him. On the monitor behind the counter, I saw him stop near the snack aisle, pick up a pack of jerky, stare at it way too long, then put it back. Then he started whispering. I couldn't make out words, just murmurs, like he was arguing with someone only he could hear. I cleared my throat. "Sir, you okay over there?" He froze. Then, without turning, he said, "Do you ever hear the hum stop?" "What hum?" He looked up toward the ceiling lights. "The one you stop noticing. Until it's gone." I tried to laugh again, but it came out shaky. "Can't say I have." He turned then, grinning just slightly. Teeth too white. "You will." He wandered to the cooler and grabbed a chocolate milk and a microwave burrito. When he came to the counter, I noticed his hands, shaking slightly, knuckles raw and dark. Not grease, something darker. "You from around here?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He set the milk down carefully. "Not anymore. Just passing through?" His eyes flicked up to mine. Passing back. I didn't know what that meant, but it shut me right up. The scanner beeped. The burrito wouldn't ring. I tried again, tapping the register. My hands felt clumsy, like my fingers didn't want to work. Maybe it was the smell. Stronger now, almost gagging. "You ever dream of something," he said softly, "and then wake up inside it?" I froze. "Can't say I have." He smiled wider. "Lucky you." He reached into his jacket for money, and that's when something clattered onto the counter. A small silver locket. It popped open when it hit, revealing a faded photo of a little girl. Sir, you dropped..." He snatched it up so fast I jumped. "Don't touch that." His voice went razor sharp, eyes blazing for half a second, then soft again. "Sorry, she doesn't like strangers." I swallowed. "No problem." He paid in crumpled bills, turned toward the seating table near the slushy machines, and sat with his back to me. He didn't eat, just stared at the wall. Every few minutes he'd whisper something. Once I thought I heard a name. Emily. The clock ticked past 2. That's when I noticed the duffel bag again. It was leaking. A dark smear on the tile, spreading inch by inch. My chest tightened. My brain screamed, "Don't look," but I couldn't stop staring. The smell, God, it was him. I grabbed my phone, thumb hovering over 911. He looked over his shoulder. "Don't," he said calmly. My heart stopped. "Don't what?" He smiled again, gentle, almost friendly. "You don't need to call anyone. She's quiet now." I took a step back. "Who's quiet?" He pointed to the bag without looking at it. "My little girl. She wouldn't stop crying. Not after what her mom did." My mouth went dry. "Sir, I think you should leave." He tilted his head. "You think so?" I forced my voice to stay steady. "Now," he stood, slow. The chair squeaked against the floor, that awful scraping sound echoing too long. He lifted the duffel, heavier than it should have been. The wet smear beneath it glistened dark red under the fluorescent light. He turned to the door. Halfway there, he stopped. "You got kids?" I shook my head. "No." "Good," he said softly. "They're loud when they scream." Then he walked out into the rain. For a minute, I just stood there, frozen. My hands were trembling so bad I almost dropped my phone. I called 911 and stammered through everything. The smell, the bag, the blood, the locket, what he said about his daughter. The dispatcher told me to lock the doors and wait. The police showed up 20 minutes later. By then, the smear had dried to a dark crust. They reviewed the footage, took my statement, and said they'd contact me if they found him. 2 days later, they did. He wasn't just some drifter. His name was Caleb Wren, a mechanic from Portland who'd gone missing 3 weeks earlier after his wife filed a restraining order. They found him sleeping in his truck near a rest stop south of Ridgeway, muttering to himself, the same duffel bag in the back seat. Inside was the body of his 7-year-old daughter. He'd killed her days before. Tried to keep her safe, he told them, from her mother's demons. The police said he'd been visiting random stores that night, talking to people like everything was normal, carrying her with him the whole time, including me. I couldn't finish my last shift. I turned in my keys that morning. The store manager understood. "You did the right thing calling it in," he said, but that didn't help much. Because every time I closed my eyes, I saw that look in Caleb's face, calm, almost peaceful, like he'd already made peace with something I couldn't understand. It's been 3 months since then. I moved back into a small apartment in Salem, working day shifts at a body shop. I thought I'd left that night behind until last week. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I ignored it. Then a voicemail came through. I almost deleted it until I saw the transcription. "You shouldn't keep it so cold in there, Logan. She hates the cold." My blood ran ice. I played the voicemail. There was breathing, wet, uneven, then a faint child's giggle, muffled like through fabric. I threw the phone across the room. The next morning, I checked the call log. No number. No record of any voicemail. Now, when the heater cuts on at night, I feel a sudden gust of cold air brush across my cheek, just like it did that night behind the counter. Every single time I flinch awake, heart pounding, expecting to see him standing in the doorway, rain dripping from his jacket, duffel bag at his feet. But there's never anyone there, only the hum. The same hum I used to ignore, until it stops. And when it does, I swear I can hear a little girl whisper my name from somewhere in the dark. I was 26 when I took the night shift at the 7-Eleven off Route 39, just outside a small town called Maple Hollow. It wasn't a glamorous job. Hell, most nights it felt like the world had forgotten me. But it paid enough to keep gas in my truck and rent covered for the dingy one-bedroom I called home. I told myself it was temporary, but every month that passed made that lie harder to swallow. My name's Eli Turner, and that winter I learned what loneliness really sounded like. The hum of refrigerators, the click of a buzzing light, and the soft creak of the door whenever a cold wind passed through. Usually my buddy Rick worked with me. He was older, ex-military, the kind of guy who didn't scare easy, but one Thursday he called in, said his kid had come down with strep throat and his wife needed him home. "You'll be fine," he said over the phone. "Just a quiet night, man. You've done worse." He wasn't wrong, but that night was different from the start. The store was dead quiet after midnight. The same stale coffee smell hung in the air, the same flicker from the security monitor in the back office. I tried to keep busy, restocking chips, wiping down counters, pretending not to notice the clock crawling forward like it had all the time in the world. Around 12:10 a.m., headlights swept across the window, a dark SUV pulling up to pump 3. It was old, big, and out of place in our sleepy little town. The paint looked dull, the plates were covered in grime, and the rear windows were blacked out with what looked like tape. The driver got out slowly. A tall man in a long coat and scuffed boots. He moved like he was rehearsing each step, head down, hands deep in his pockets. Something about him set off a quiet alarm in my chest. He pushed open the door, the bell chimed, and the smell hit me first. A mix of sweat, tobacco, and something metallic. His eyes were pale gray, darting around the store before landing on me. "You call this customer service?" he said, voice rough, low. I blinked. Excuse me?" "You heard me," he muttered. "Gas pumps, slow as hell. You gonna fix it or just stand there like a mannequin?" I forced a laugh. "Sorry, sir. Sometimes the pumps lag when it's cold. Should be fine in a second." He didn't laugh back. He stared at me too long, then said, "Mind giving me a hand? My joints aren't what they used to be." Now, by policy, if someone asks for assistance and claims disability, we're supposed to help. But there was no placard in the window, no limp, nothing. Still, I didn't want trouble. I grabbed a rag and went outside. The cold hit like a wall. The man leaned against his SUV, watching me. I started pumping gas, then reached for the squeegee to clean his windshield. That's when I felt it. A hand clamping over my mouth and eyes, pressing hard. I twisted, startled, but whoever was behind me was strong. "Easy now," a voice hissed in my ear. I struggled, heart pounding, trying to shout. My voice came out muffled. I kicked backward, connected with something solid, and the grip loosened. I spun around. The tall man had moved closer, his coat open now, and there was another man behind me, shorter, wearing a ski cap. "Get him in the car," the tall one snapped. Adrenaline took over. I shoved the shorter guy hard enough that he slipped on the icy pavement. Then I bolted. My shoes slid across the asphalt, and I nearly fell as I sprinted across the lot toward the store. Behind me, I heard the tall man curse. The SUV's engine revved. I dove through the sliding doors just as they closed behind me. My hands fumbled with the phone by the counter, but it wasn't there. My own cell was plugged in, charging by the register, inside the counter. The SUV lights flashed across the front glass again. For a moment, I froze. Then I remembered. There was a second phone, the old store landline by the back office. I ran for it, my boots squeaking on the linoleum. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely dial 911. 911, what's your emergency? There's two men outside the 7-Eleven on Route 39. They tried to grab me. The operator's tone sharpened. Are you safe right now? I think so. I stopped. The headlights were gone. The SUV had vanished. When the cops showed up 15 minutes later, lights flashing red and blue against the snow, I was still behind the counter, clutching the phone like a lifeline. Officer Henderson was first through the door. Big guy, calm voice, the kind of man who'd seen too much to be easily rattled. You said two suspects? He asked. Yeah, one tall, one shorter. They tried to drag me toward their car. He nodded, glanced at the pumps, then waved his partner over. We'll pull the CCTV, you sit tight, kid. While they reviewed the footage, I watched through the store window. There, across the lot, were faint boot prints leading toward the woods behind the gas station. One of the cops followed the trail with a flashlight, but after 20 feet, the prints disappeared into the slush. Inside, Henderson came back frowning. You're lucky, son. They didn't just stop at the pumps, and what do you mean? He handed me a printout, a still from the camera. It showed the tall man inside the store behind the counter while I was outside. He'd been tampering with the DVR system, trying to shut off the feed. He knew exactly where the recorder was. Henderson said quietly, You've seen him before? I shook my head. Then I'd say this wasn't random. By 3 a.m., they'd found something else. The SUV's license plate, a partial from one of the cameras, matched a vehicle reported stolen 3 days earlier in another county. A state detective came by later, asking questions about whether anyone had been following me, whether I'd noticed strange customers recently. I told him no, just the usual drunks and travelers. He nodded slowly. We've had reports of a crew moving through stations along this route. Could be connected to trafficking, robberies. We're not sure yet. They target isolated locations, usually with just one clerk inside. My stomach twisted. So I was just, what? Wrong place, wrong time? He gave me a look that said maybe and maybe not. The next day I quit. My manager tried to talk me out of it, but I couldn't step foot in that store again. Every noise made me flinch, every headlight made my chest tighten. A week later, Henderson called. They caught one of them, he said. The short guy. Found him trying to torch another stolen SUV outside Bismarck. He's not talking, but the fingerprints match your incident. I thanked him, but it didn't make me feel better, because one was still out there. Months passed. I took a job at a tire shop in town. Daytime hours, people always around. It was boring but safe, or so I thought. One rainy afternoon while closing up, a black SUV rolled by slowly. My stomach dropped. The same make, same shape, even the same broken taillight. It didn't stop, just crept along before turning down another street. Maybe it was nothing, maybe coincidence. But that night, lying awake in my small apartment, I could still feel that gloved hand over my mouth. The weight of it pressing me toward a fate I didn't even want to imagine. People like to think evil announces itself, that it comes with screams, with chaos, with signs you can read in time to act. But I learned that night it doesn't. Sometimes it walks right up to you, calm and polite, wearing a trench coat and asking for help. Since then, I don't fill my tank at night. I don't stop at lonely stations, and I sure as hell don't work the graveyard shift anymore. I drove past that old 7-Eleven last month. It's boarded up now. The company closed it after low traffic and repeated incidents. Weeds grow through the asphalt. The pumps are rusted. The place looks like a ghost. But in my head, the lights are still on. The hum still buzzes, and the tall man in the trench coat is still out there somewhere, waiting for another lonely clerk to walk into his reach. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't turned fast enough, if I'd been slower, weaker, more trusting. I don't like to imagine it. All I know is, like, that night changed me. Now, whenever I pass a gas station, I still check the mirrors, still glance at the shadows, still keep one hand on the door, because evil doesn't always hide in the dark. Sometimes it stands right under the fluorescent lights.